So, Bootstrap is a coming of age story about a tenacious orphan from Montana, which is me. And it's a rare tale of being a young woman at the heart of Silicon Valley's rise during the 70s and 80s. And this was a time when the personal computer had just come out, it had just been launched in 77, Apple, the Apple II, and IBM in 81. And then they had to figure out a way to get those computers to talk to each other, and that's where the networking came in. It was before the days of Cisco and all of that. So it was really at the cusp of today's internet at the very beginning. The reader is transported to a time of tremendous innovation where mainframe computers were replaced with network PCs and the groundbreaking Ethernet technology. But because it's a coming of age stories, there's also the emotional side, the trials and tribulations of an orphan.
Sure. You'd mentioned that you had lost your parents by age 15, and I'm kind of curious, how does that shape the life that you describe in the memoir?
Yeah, well, at first, when I lost my mother, I was basically in denial, and I thought I was just like everybody else, and there was really no difference between me, and the person sitting next to me. What I've come to find out is we are really defined by the sum total of our experiences, and you don't have the option to leave anything out. So to not know that I'm an orphan would be to not know me. And to know me as an orphan would be to know the deepest part of me and my deepest and longest held secret. And one thing that happens is you lose your safety net and you feel that the buck stops here, so to speak, to use a cliche. So if I don't survive or if I can't figure out a way to support myself, I won't survive. There's also the hard part to talk about is the fear of abandonment that follows you. And ironically, the fear of abandonment never leaves. I was orphaned at 15, but I lost my father when I was 8. So basically, I suffered two losses, fairly close together. And when you lose your father, like a lot of us actually have father issues. And mine were really pronounced because I was always in search of a father figure. And that dictated who I had relationships with, how fast I fell for them, and how difficult it was to get out of some of them, even though I knew they were bad.
But you had a lot of friends and neighbors help you through this period, correct?
I had two. And the first neighbor was the principal at the grade school where my mom taught. She was a fourth grade teacher. He was a principal. And in the trailer park where we both lived, they were our neighbors. They had 6 kids of their own, so their trailer was pretty packed. But my mom and I decided in a conversation, we rarely had heart-to-heart conversations, but in one of those conversations, I said, well, why don't I just move in with the Kings? They're right next door and I can finish school. It seems simple. That's a 15-year-old's logic. And so she talked to him and the principal, and he said I could stay there. I don't know that his wife really agreed to it or was super happy about having, another person in their already crowded trailer. Over time, her and I didn't connect. So she asked me to leave in my senior year of high school, which is really a terrible time to have to leave and pull out of school. You've come all this way and now you're going to have to go to a big school, maybe move in with my sisters who really didn't want me either, because who wants a 15-year-old younger sister to live with them when we're just starting their lives with kids. So another friend's mom said, you know what, she can stay with us. We got a spare room. Their daughter had just moved out. Their younger daughter had decided to move schools. She moved out and they said, she can stay here. And they didn't really put a time limit on it, but I put one on it, which was the day after high school graduation, I moved out.
Was that 1976?
Yes.
So that was obviously a crucial moment. That's when things changed. So I'm kind of curious, how do you go from Montana to the Silicon Valley?
And that's why I wrote the book. And not to be, cute or anything, but that seriously, my therapist kept saying, you should write a book. You should really write a book. And when I would tell people the tale, it's a long tale, so I don't want to get into it, but the journey started with going to DeVry Institute of Technology in Phoenix, Arizona. And once I did that, I was on a whole new trajectory that I had no idea. I never wanted to live in California. I mean, I didn't even know Silicon Valley. It meant nothing to me, but I was afraid of California because all the crazy drivers, because you're in Montana and you have lots of room and space. In California, they don't. And California was not on my map at all. But once I went to DeVry, you get electronics technician diploma. the place to work is Silicon Valley. That's the short story.
Mhm. Was there one singular thing you might remember most during the beginning of this, like in the technology industry? Was, was there ever a sense once you got involved with school and kind of charting the path that you're going to take, was there a sense that something big was going to happen?
Actually, in the 80s, there was a downturn in tech. It was hard for some engineers to get jobs. The person that I first worked for was at GE Medical Systems, and he had a hard time actually getting a job when he graduated from college with an EE degree. That was in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. Then when I arrived in 1978, things were starting to turn, but we had droughts. It just didn't seem that great. But I was following my passion. I wanted to get an engineering degree myself. Then in 86, things started to pop. That's when, like, as I mentioned, the IBM PC came out in 81. And so by 86, people were trying to figure out how to connect these things together. Because before, mainframes were kind of the main way of communicating. If I was going to send you an email, I have to send it, it would go through the mainframe, and then you might get it at a dumb terminal. But now we had PCs, and they were standalone, and I had no way to send you an email except for through SneakerNet. If I copied it on a drive and gave it to you, then you could probably read my document.
Well, there was always passenger pigeon, and there was, message in a bottle. So I want to go into the book now, and I'm kind of curious, so you've written essays. I know you've had some poetry published. Why a memoir now?
I started out just writing little stories. A therapist of mine asked me to write my stories. She said, it's not part of therapy. I just want to go deeper into I want to understand you deeper. Would you write these stories? Tell me the story about when you got kicked out. Tell me the story. Because we would just go over the top of it in therapy. So I wrote her the story, and then she read it, and she goes, write me another one. Make it about this time. So, and she read it on her own time, and she sent me feedback and email. It really didn't seem to be part of therapy. And after maybe the third or fourth one, she goes, this isn't really a dinner conversation kind of comment, but I'm telling you, you should write a book. And I thought, yeah, sure, I bet you mean that. And she goes, and she said it probably 3 or 4 times at different places. And I continued to write the little stories. And after there was quite a few of them, I thought, well, this seems like it's a memoir. Maybe I should take a memoir writing class. And once I took that step, there was no going back. That's partly my personality. I had a very good teacher at the Stanford Adult Education. He said I could do it. He said it was a story that was worth being told. And that was enough. I just needed like one validation, and I was off and running, and I couldn't stop.
Did you find that the book's purpose changed during the writing process?
Absolutely. At first, it was very personal. As I mentioned, I was doing it for this therapist, but I was also noticing the more I wrote about it, I didn't cry anymore. Like I don't know if you numb yourself or you accept your story. Maybe that's what it is. You tell your story and you accept it, and that's what it is. And there's no more reason to cry because you've taken the power away from the story and given it back to yourself. I'm the teller of the story. I'm the owner of the story. And so it became very personal, basically. It was empowering. It was helping me to move on, to let go of things, to accept things. And then as people read it, I mean, probably younger people, but even I have a writing group of women who are older than me, and they were inspired by it. And they were entertained by it. And in some cases, they shed some tears in it. But the thing that probably really clicked with me is when a younger person said, I'm inspired by your story. Then fast forward to today, when I'm quite a bit involved with AAUW, American Association of University Women. And our thing that we care a lot about is seeing that young women get scholarships for STEM careers and also get exposure when they're younger, like in 7th grade, to STEM opportunities. We sponsor camps at the different universities for them to go learn about, science, technology, engineering, and math at UC Davis is one, UC Santa Cruz. So now I feel that this book's purpose it's now beyond me. It now belongs to the next generation, and for whatever help they may find it. And I have one more reason I thought of is that when I was struggling with things, anything, love, I don't know, breakups, just hardships, I would go to the bookstore and I would just sit down. I go to the self-help and just pull out a book and either read it there or, take three of them home or whatever. But I found a lot of solace in books and reading what others had been through, and how they survived it. And I want to be there, on that shelf with them.
So, what would you consider the message, or what message do you hope readers take from your experiences?
I think it's to keep going, even when you think you can't, or you've been knocked down over and over again. If it's your dream, keep going. And this is, my hero, one of my heroes, and it's laughable, I know, was Scarlett O'Hara. And I think it's because she would always look out and say, tomorrow's another day. Let's pull the curtains down and make myself a new dress. She would take the worst situations and tomorrow's another day. And I kind of feel like if there's a message at all, I just want people to think tomorrow's another day. And one of my little remedies, and I say it jokingly, but it really was a remedy. I would take a hot bath, I'd get the Oreos out, pour a glass of red wine, and just all my self-pity would come to fruition in that bathtub that night. And then I'd go to bed, the next day I'd get up and, all right, let's go back to it.
Is it important is it important for memoir writers to balance out emotional truth alongside, I should say, the accuracy of one's life that got them to that point? I mean, in that sense, did you find any particular difficulty in going back over the time, from when you've written this book to like when all these things were occurring and kind of pulling out the emotional heart of it? Is that difficult, or did you find it difficult?
Very difficult. The very first time I wrote the story about the people who kicked me out, is what I call them, sorry, but that's, the very first writing of it, though they were ogres. They were just terrible people. The second writing of it, they weren't so bad. You could kind of see their side of the story. I think the part in the book that what ended up in the book is as honest as I can be about it, given I am biased. But I mean, it was my life that was impacted, but to try to see it through their eyes. And I'm going to also have another corny quote for you, but the Eagles song that there's three sides to every story. There's yours, there's mine, and there's the cold, hard truth. And I feel that if you're going to be a good memoir writer, you've got to get to the cold, hard truth, and you've got to look at yourself and understand, what is your learning from that? How did you contribute to it? And what is your learning and takeaway for that too, if you could have reversed it or if you could have seen it coming and stopped it? And maybe you couldn't. And maybe the answer is, well, you couldn't, and you just needed to leave and let go of that. But it feels like, I'm going to also say, and I don't mean to put myself in the category of like artists of, paintings and whatnot, but I find that the artists that I like the most are the ones who are the most honest with who they are. And they just put themselves out there, whether it's on the canvas or the page. And it might seem like it might be embarrassing, but those are the ones that you can connect with because they're being honest. And I think there's honesty and there's accuracy. And so being able to fact check and say, well, this is what I thought was happening at the time, and then go back, and it's so great to have the internet now because you can just ask Google for what was happening in 1976. And I thought the Vietnam War was kind of overshadowing us. Is that true? Is that kind of stuff. So I think being historically accurate with what's happening is important because that also impacted what was going on.
You are listening to the local Scribe here on KAAD LP 103.5 FM. We are in conversation with Cindy Zickman. I was kind of struck by what you said, about that honesty, if you're an artist, and I agree with that. It kind of like goes into a belief that I have. It's you're almost indebted to do that. You're indebted to tell a truth of oneself or be uncompromising in whatever artistic medium you use. It just seems like if you were kind of not doing that, it would be another story that you'd have to remember later on, almost like a lie that you'd have to keep track of for years and years and hopefully not get caught out on it. So let's go back to the book. How long did it take you to write this?
I started the first little pieces that I told you about. Those were started in around 2016, actually. And in 2018, I went and got a Master's of Fine Arts to help me turn it into a book. And after I graduated in 2020, I spent the next 6 years rewriting the whole thing dozens of times. So the initial writing might have taken a couple years, if you will, but the rewriting has taken about 6 or 8 years total.
Was there anything you discovered while doing the rewrites, about the story, or I should say that compares to what your initial first draft was?
I think it's important in memoir to, in a non-obvious, clunky way, I think it's important to have reflection and lessons learned without saying, and here's my reflection, but just to sort of incorporate how it changed me, or the writer, how it impacted. Why was this little scene put in here? What was the importance of it? To show that without saying it. I think, and that's the thing that changed a lot. I started to be more conscious of of the storyline, and maybe using flashbacks and backstory rather than telling everything from the time I was 8 until the time I was 28. That's really boring. That's really laborious. But my development editor helped a lot in saying, I think you can start the story here, when you're 17, and then put in the backstory as you go, and show how what happened when you're 8 impacts you now when you're 20.
Sure.
And then when I read it, I kind of will go, wow, this is really weird. This is like scary true,
It's a trip or a journey that's kind of spooky, or kind of not spooky scary, but spooky in the sense that I really don't know what's going to happen next. I really don't know what's going to be around the corner waiting for me. And I was kind of curious when you finished this and you started sending it out to agents or small presses, how many did you actually approach? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. And it is a discouraging journey. I queried, well, first I want to say I did go to a lot of panel discussions. So I did a lot of studying of how to get published. So that first and foremost. So it did help in terms of being more targeted with my approach, because some people query hundreds of agents. I queried 21 small presses, no large presses. I determined through all of these classes I was taking, they're not going to be interested, unless you're Taylor Swift or somebody's, Michelle Obama, they're not going to be interested in your memoir. But small presses are, they still want to tell human sides or humanistic stories about real people with extraordinary experiences and extraordinary lives. You don't have to have a fancy name. So there's like 21 presses. And then I tried the agents. I kind of knew it was futile. I'd been told it was. But I decided, well, I need something to do while I'm waiting for them to get back to me, So I did query those agents. Most of them don't even get back to you. And if they for months and or at all, actually, I got a whole list of ones that didn't get back to me. But some of them, the ones that I thought were the most respectful, they were either the owners of a small press, or they worked in a small press, and they would get back to me right away saying, we're not interested in this now, or we will be, but it's going to take us a while. But there's a whole lot of no's out there. So yeah, the more you can do to study up on the market and who might be interested in your book, I think the more heartache you'll save.
Sure. What do you think aspiring authors can learn from receiving a number of rejections over the course of time? I mean, you didn't give up. I know I didn't give up. But what would you consider to be that, one nugget of wisdom that says you're going to get rejections and here's how you deal with it?
I think you got to keep going. You have to write for yourself, because if you're writing for someone else, and I take that with a grain of salt too, if you do have to be honest with your work. And if someone rejects you, gives you the reason why, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but maybe you do need to rewrite it, or maybe you do need to reorder it, or maybe there's something you need to do with the work.
Did you get anything like that, a rejection that said, you need to do this, or this doesn't appeal to us?
I haven't. I didn't get that. I have friends that have gotten that.
Huh.
What they told me was, we don't do memoir. You're nobody and we don't do memoir. So I said, well, I didn't say anything, but a lot of times I look at their bios and they say they do memoir. So that's a whole nother ball. I'm not going to go into
I know.
fit throwing here right now, but that was the kind of feedback I got. And then I did look at my work sometimes after I submitted it and went, oh man, this was a really bad way to start. No wonder they rejected it. I mean, there was sort of those come to Jesus meetings, if you will, with yourself, where you could see this probably wasn't very good. But when I pitched it to the person who actually took it, by then I was quite ready. And I had an editor that had come through, and we just did a lot of work and cleaned it up. And it was a good sales pitch. Yeah. And I think I just kept pitching it. I guess back to the advice part. The other thing, if this helps at all, I don't know, but sometimes if you get a rejection from an agent, what they're really saying is, I'm not qualified to sell your work. I don't know how to sell this work. They won't say that to you. I mean, they're not going to say they can't do something, but they're just going to say, oh yeah, no, it's whatever. So I think you also have to think about, it's also their issue. You found the wrong person, a person who's not qualified to represent you. And so that's one way to keep going is just to think of it that way. Another way is to look at your work and decide, am I targeting the right people? But I also feel like just keep writing, even if it's fragments. I have gone back, and that was advice given to me that I didn't want to take and didn't take, and then I did take it. And what I'm finding is that now I've got a newsletter, and I'm constantly going back to the fragments I wrote a long time ago for newsletter ideas that I thought would never appear, that I would never have a use for, and I've had a use for them. And so write for yourself and keep writing and keep track of it. Don't throw anything away, because you're going to use it someday. You really will.
And there's your pro tip for the day.
Yeah.
When everything was done and you got that email or that message that said, we're gonna do this, what were your emotions that you experienced after receiving, the publishing contract?
Disbelief. I was like, did it finally happen? Did they really mean it? Obviously,
is someone playing a joke on me or what? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you mean it? Like, what's wrong with you? No. And then, I mean, there was all the excitement and the elation, the doubt, is this really going to happen? And then the thing that I don't think I've gotten over with is the fear. It's the fear, because I haven't told this story to anybody. My husband knows most all the story, but you don't ever. Who wants to actually listen to 250 pages of a story that's just in the moment of writing it, right? So he probably does know the whole story, but he's the only person on earth who knows the whole story. And so there's going to be people out there that'll be surprised at people that I know that are going to read it and go, I didn't know you went through that. I didn't know that happened. I didn't. And so then there's also going to be people out there that said, oh, I didn't think you were that way. I thought you were like this. And so nobody is not going to be surprised. There's going to be a surprise in there for pretty much everyone who knows me. And that scares me, because they're going to now see the real me. And I've been very careful to hide that. All these years, all these 60 some years.
The carefully cultivated image.
Exactly. I got this, that matches, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, no, they're going to see the fall apart image, and the one who, okay. So here was one of the highest compliments I got from a teacher. She goes, man, this character is flawed. And I was the character. She goes, this is a really flawed character. And I said, well, yeah. She goes, yeah, okay. But it's someone I would want to spend time with. She said, I'd spend time with this character, but boy, is she flawed.
I'll take whatever motivation you can give me. Call my character fly, call him this, call him that, or it's all good. And I think that's something that a lot of writers need to kind of understand. I don't know about you, but I would be very uncomfortable if I got a kind of response that was just the word I'm looking for, that was just very oh, this is so great. This is so wonderful. This is the best thing. Because I have, like you mentioned, I have like a lot of like self-doubts. And, I just want my character to be realistic. And so I kind of like have concerns or I kind of like, give a side eye at anything that says, oh, this is fantastic right out from the get-go. Maybe to some people it is, but I just have difficulty in handling that at times. Did you ever run into an experience where, you were getting all these, superlatives and deep down you knew that it's just a character?
Yeah, I think sometimes, depending on the writing group you're in or the class that you're taking, people want to say nice things.
Sure.
And if they know you, they want to say nice things more. And so I sort of take the compliments with the insults, and that's with a grain of salt. They've also said pretty bad things too, negative things. But I think if they say positive, too positive, I think you gotta take the Buddhist way. It's like nothing's that great and nothing's that bad. It's all kind of the same.
I think that's still a good reason to get involved with writing groups. You need to hear a little bit of everything.
I agree. I think writing groups are the thing that kept me going. Actually, I should have said that as my advice is keep going. And if it's hard to do on your own, so get in a group.
Super, super. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you've been listening